So I'm Philippe, and I'm a system engineer. I'm working in media and entertainment, and among other things, I'm an industry associate at the UCL Center for Blockchain Technologies. You may wonder what's the bridge between media and entertainment and the construction industry. Well, that's a very easy question or very easy answer. As you know, in the media and entertainment sector, we are building sets. So we are building tangible sets, and we are building digital sets, typically in video games, which means that we are using exactly the same tools, the same CAD tools, etc., as you are using in the construction industry. And we are also facing the same environmental constraint as you have in the construction industry, as we have now to produce TV series or films in the full respect of the environment. So that's the connection between construction and media and entertainment. Then, staying for a moment on the title, you may wonder why I'm interested in tokenization. And basically, it is to automate the licensing of, in our case, 3D objects or any type of digital files, the distribution of them, and the remuneration of the creators. The automation can produce interesting byproduct, like the acceleration, of course, of those processes. It can make those processes much more affordable because less people are involved and more machines are involved. And if we prepare this automation, we very probably will also simplify the process. Last but not least, I think that the tokenization will allow us to make those processes more transparent. So that's the very short intro. Now, when we discuss tokenization in our domain, joint domain, construction and media and entertainment, we have few domain of application. And as you can see already on this slide, it becomes extremely complex. If I stay one moment on construction, which can include buildings in Shenzhen or sets in Hollywood, it includes 3D drawings. It includes explanation for those 3D drawings. It includes list of materials, and it can also include production process. When you go back to intellectual property rights, and you remember the four main we have more than four now, but four main categories: patent, design, trademark, and copyright. You see that already on the first bullet point, I'm touching at least three of them. 3D drawing is obviously a design. Literary explanation is worthy of copyright protection, and a production process can even be patentable. So you see already this complexity here. When we use 3D object in video games, what happened immediately, which of course also happened in the construction industry, is that there are very, very, very few games which are produced by one person. So it's a collaborative effort. And some people are typically set designer, builders for video games. They do the landscape. And they do the landscape for one game. But the castle that they build somewhere can also be reused in another game. So we are facing the issue of collaborative production, collaborative creation, which is tricky when it comes to remuneration. Another topic about video games is that as soon as a gamer, a player, is touching something and doing something, which is playing, the player will also create content. So there is content which has been created by the video games producer, but there is also content which is produced by the player. When we go to the metaverse, or we use the metaverse as a medium, we have all the previous complexity, but we add very tricky complexity about the rights related to 3D avatar, because a 3D avatar can be considered as the digital identity of somebody. And the digital identity of somebody can be created without that somebody knowing about it. So you see the complexity of that. And if that would not be enough, the hype for the moment is generative AI. And as you know, there is a lot of debate about what should be allowed, what should not be allowed to train those models, etc. All the question about consent and how would you consent or not consent about the use of your things, that's very, very fuzzy and not yet solved at the moment. So I would like very shortly to present to you 3 different types of tokenization of 3D assets. And that's a bit of a complex slide, but we can go relatively quickly on that. Here you have somebody creating an asset. And as soon as somebody creates an asset, this asset digitally is managed somewhere. And the blue line is about the asset itself. The green light is about data. So as soon as we have the 3D digital asset, we have data about that, which allow us to declare the ownership or rights holdership or condition of exploitation, terms and conditions, about that famous asset. This can be tokenized, and that is one first step of tokenization, tokenizing the rights registration, which is useful because if we have that, we can use that to create a smart contract about which you spoke a lot today and the previous days. And with those smart contracts, as previous speakers said, well, you can go in marketplaces and distribute, remunerate, etc. What we can also do is we can tokenize those smart contracts in a way that they are automatically readable and usable and remunerable by the user, bypassing, if you want, a marketplace between the seller of a 3D model and the buyer of a 3D model. So those are the 2 first steps of tokenization, or possible step of tokenization, which, by the way, are almost independent of each other. Tokenizing the rights registration or tokenizing the monetization of those rights or entitlement. The red lines are about the monetization, which is direct in the case if we tokenize the monetization, or semi-direct or indirect in the case of the use of a marketplace. Now, interestingly, we have this domain here on the left, where you say that having tokenized monetization, well, we can then pay and remunerate the designer, the producer of the 3D asset. Well, that is one possibility, but many of those assets are owned not by one person, but by a collective of people. So typically in the music industry, also in the film industry, we have financial funds, and those funds have package of rights, and the funds, as you know, in the finance industry are split into little shares and portion, etc. So that is one distinction between a single owner or single holder of rights and a collective of holder of rights. So when we have a collective of holder of rights, then we can potentially also tokenize the remuneration. So as soon as money is coming at one point, that money can be, again, split among different rights holders. And this is, very briefly, the 3 types of tokenization that I envisage. One about the rights registration, one about the monetization of those rights, and one as soon as money is available to remunerate a collective of rights holders. I have the pleasure to work with Niall with this. We have a common project which is funded by the DSF Foundation. And as Niall explained to you earlier today, is dealing with the smart legal contract part of this. So when you have tokenized rights registration, you have plenty of data, and which point, among others, on to standard terms and conditions which are stored in a natural language as a narrative. That's where Niall and his techniques are coming front and transform those narratives into machine-readable language, which can then be used by smart contract for media. Last but not least, I also happen to work with ISO in the standardization of NFT. And the start of this collaboration with ISO was my interest in automation and rule-based automation of licensing process. That's how I was invited to join them. And we started an exercise of standardization, which means first you create a document, which is use cases and requirement for standard. This is now public, and people all over the planet are invited to propose a way to standardize a non-fungible token. And the requirement, which is linking to many things that you have discussed in the last 3 days, the requirement for the standard is that things should be compatible, so interoperable. It should include the description of the metadata. It should be embeddable and referenceable. Those metadata must be embeddable somewhere, somehow. We need to tackle the question of provenance, authenticity, and integrity. We will work with people who have media asset registration format. To give you one example, we have at W3C ODRL, which is now even revamped in a version 3.0. So that's the type of things we are discussing here. And we need to tackle the management of intellectual property rights. So that's big work. The proposal are due in January 2024, and you can imagine that the standardization will run probably a couple of years, so that somewhere in the middle of 2026, we might have a standard for NFT. Now, a point which is interesting to make is that JPEG, as you know, is dealing with pictures, and MPEG is doing with moving pictures. But when JPEG decided to go for the standardization of NFTs, they said it should be format neutral. And what they mean with this is that it can also include not only fixed pictures or moving pictures or music or 3D models. So here we are back to the construction industry. The standard that we will develop, I think, could be very well interesting also in the construction industry. That's it for me. I think I'm